Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy Author Lounge. This month in the lounge, we've got not just an author, but he's a narrator as well. You might know him best from his narration work, but also his brand new book, the bestseller known as Legends Lattes. That's right, it's Travis Baldree.
And welcome to the lounge, Travis. Great to have you here. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks, man.
Excellent. Great to have you here. You have quite the background, right? From award-winning audiobook narrator to game developer, now best-selling author. So tell us about yourself and your journey to this point.
Apparently, I just can't do one job, I guess. I was a game developer for like 20 years. If you played PC games at all, Torchlight is probably the thing that most people know me from, or Fate, which they probably played on their parents' laptops. And more recently, Rebel Galaxy. I've co-owned and run a couple companies, Runic Games and Double Damage Games. Anyway, did that for a long time. While I was doing it, I started doing audiobook narration on the side because I had some of the equipment I needed from VO work for games because it was cheaper than like renting studio time.
Right.
And my kids didn't need me to read to them anymore, so I started narrating books on the side, and I discovered I liked it. And after doing Will White's Cradle series, which is the thing I'm best known for in audiobooks, all credit due to Will, I ended up getting more and more work, and eventually I just decided I liked that a lot better than making games. I like book people. Book people are awesome. So a couple of years ago, I just sort of quietly retired from games and started doing audiobooks. And I'm writing this book. This is a NaNoWriMo book. I wrote it in November for NaNoWriMo. A friend of mine, Avon Shore, who's another narrator, convinced me that we should take another crack at getting a NaNoWriMo done. I've failed any number of times, and I finally did something simple enough that I could finish it. And I thought it was all right. And then I thought, I work with all these independent authors all the time, but I don't see what they go through for publishing, self-pub. So I thought, well, you know what? I've got a book. I'll go through the whole KDP self-pub process. I'll do it all just so that I see what it's like on the other side of the fence.
Right. Yeah.
And then I really didn't expect. I thought it would be really cool if enough people bought it to pay for my cover art. That
Right.
was my it would be neat if that happened. It would be really
Humble
cool.
goal.
That happened
Yeah.
within, I don't know, like 10 hours. So, and it's just been all fairy tales for me since then. So.
Man, yeah, it has been. I've been watching it, and it's been all over Twitter, all over Facebook, and it's fantastic to see. I mean that's one of the best parts about being an indie author or an author in general is just seeing another author's success, especially in your genre and your field. And yeah, it's you seem to have inspired quite a few people as well to write kind of slice of life cozy fantasy from what I've seen.
Been really, really pleasant. I think it's been especially nice because the book is mostly nice. It's mostly about nice people being
Yeah.
nice, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like I feel like the response it gets sort of like is infused with that to a certain extent because it's people looking for something nice. So it's probably even nicer than it might otherwise normally be. If I had written Grimdark and people really liked it, maybe the response would feel a little different. Anyway, it's
Yeah.
been really, I'm really humbled, and it feels like mostly it's like t accidental timing, lightning strike kind of stuff. Just I
Mm.
happened to be where the lightning was going to hit, just due to the timing, and I don't know. Everybody likes orcs.
People do. Everyone likes orcs, especially I think, yeah, orcs that aren't that don't act like your average orcs as well, which I'm getting from Viv quite a lot. But yeah, well, I tell you what, before we dive into Legends and Lattes, let's just stick on the narration stuff because I mean that is something I don't know, it's an area that I've always secretly wished I could do, and I think it's just an amazing aspect and a really interesting role, especially as an author getting to work with a narrator and hearing someone bring it to life. So yeah, it sounds like a brilliant job. I mean, what's an average day like? I know you're in your sound booth right now, so
I
it
usually
looks comfy.
spend, well, you've got a great voice. Maybe you should narrate. I spend maybe 5 or 6 hours in the booth a day for about 3 hours of audio. And I do that more or less every day. Um, and I really enjoy it because for me, narrating is like you can't skim. You have to properly digest everything that's going on. So you get kind of like the best version of the book that you can get.
That
Every
makes a lot of sense.
if I'm reading something and somebody's interrupting me, or I'm like sitting waiting for it, I'm not really getting everything out of it. Like maybe I skimmed that line. I'm certainly not delivering it with the proper emotion in my brain. I'm like sometimes I'm just chewing through the text. And
Right,
it's
yeah.
cool to be able to do it in a way where you're just not allowed to do that. So it's kind of weirdly idealized,
Mm.
which I think is actually pretty special. So, I mean, if I had infinite hours, I would read every book that I liked out loud because
Yeah.
I think it's like better for me personally than reading it to
That makes
myself in my
sense.
brain. So it's a really cool job, and the people are nice. In the same way that book people are really nice,
Mm.
narrators are really nice because narrators are also book people.
Yeah.
It's it could not be a bigger contrast to game development
Really?
as far
Okay.
as I mean, like the writing and narrating communities are really, really diverse. Gaming is it's a lot of white dudes. It's a lot of white
That's
dudes
fair.
between, who are between the ages of 18 and maybe 30 before they start to burn out.
Mm.
So it's like there's a really narrow slice of the world that you see from in there. And it's really different vibe. I love audiobooks. I love being able to finish and like ship a product like once a week. It's
Yeah.
super cool.
That's a huge sense of accomplishment. I think that's, that's like you say,
Way easier
constantly
than
growing.
writing. Way easier than writing.
Yeah. Well,
The writer
it's
does
quite
all the heavy
interesting.
lifting, and I get to come in and just like polish it a little bit at the end. It's like, I'll just put a little whipped cream on top. This is great.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, that's my next question. I mean, how was working on Will White's Cradle? Because I mean, that's obviously a beast of a series as well as obviously a beast of an author who knows what he's doing.
Will's a really readable author. I mean, he writes to be read, so they're always a pleasure to read. And he does such great character work with,
Mm,
really spare language that it's
yeah,
really
that does.
they're really breezy and fast to read, and they just get more and more interesting the further they go, which is really cool. I mean, a lot of series, they kind of start strong and then maybe limp a little bit, but Will's series just continues to accelerate and get more and more interesting and cool the deeper you get into it, which is
Mm,
really awesome and kind of rare. So I just
yeah,
feel lucky that I don't know, I got my coat caught in the door of the bus or whatever.
dragged along by Will. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's just fantastic to see Will essentially achieve what he has achieved as an indie author, and it's just transcended indie, I think.
He's amazing, and
Yeah.
he's just Will is just good people. He's just a great guy. His family is amazing. I get to talk to and interact with his family, and they're all wonderful people,
Mm,
all kind of on board Team Will. It's
yeah.
really cool. Frankly, it's just totally heartwarming.
Oh man, it's nice. That's the thing. That's going to be the key word of this. Is just nice people, the
Nice
book
people.
people. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's talk about the book then. Legends and Lattes. Then, so been 7 or 8 weeks since launch, and still soaring. Still, I mean, I think last time I checked, it was 300th in the Kindle store yesterday or today or something like that, which is a fantastic achievement. And it's described as a hot cup of fantasy, slice of life with a dollop of romantic froth. Kudos on that one, that on line of that blurb, because I really like that. It's very coffee
Thanks.
themed. So yeah, tell us more about the book, the inspiration for it, the inspiration behind the main character Viv. Yeah, how did it come to your brain?
Um, so I read a lot of adventure fiction, obviously, which is again, like some guy fighting some world-ending threat. I read a lot of it, and I like it. It's really fun, but I was kind of joking. I work live on Discord, so I have some people who tend to watch me as I narrate. And I was joking live, I was like, what I really need is like a Hallmark fantasy. I need like a Hallmark Channel movie, but like in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah,
Because it's COVID, everybody's in their house, the world is kind of fraught, and I was like, I'm this kind of the breed of escapist fantasy where everything is really fraught doesn't feel really escapist to me right now.
very
I
true.
just want to do
Yeah,
something like I want something nice to happen. And that feels escapist to me. Like the idea of going to a coffee shop at the time I wrote this and seeing other human beings' faces was total escapist fantasy. It was just
yeah,
not something I could do, but I wanted to do. So I don't know. I had that idea. Um, and I thought, as far as a protagonist, who would just be the furthest from what I normally am tasked with narrating?
mm,
And that Viv kind of showed up. And pretty rapidly, it became a book about people who were not who refused to be seen or categorized as what they obviously were or what the stereotype was for who they were. Like every character in the book is that.
mm,
And even the coffee shop is that. It's a livery that refuses to be a livery. It's everything is not, it refuses to be typecast. So
mm.
that was just kind of I didn't intentionally set out to do that, but it started to develop and then I'm like, oh, I better hang on.
Yeah. Well, those are the best kinds of books to write. The ones that you kind of feel like they're writing themselves. Was Viv that kind of character?
Yeah, every time it's time to write dialogue, I just kind of knew who the characters were. I had the characters in my brain pretty solidly. They all fleshed out a lot as it was being written. I mean, I knew who they were, but I just discovered more things about them that kind of like embroidered it a little bit as I went, which was nice. But um, I think it's helpful to read other people's books out loud for a living as far as writing dialogue and or just writing in general, because it not necessarily that makes me a good writer, but it clarifies what I like. So it was like it was really I all of that kind of got codified for me after doing, hundreds of other people's books. Here are the things that I respond to. Here's what I want to see in a book because this is the part that I really like when I'm reading it out loud. And so I think a lot of the characters are sort of a result of that. It was like things that I liked.
That's really cool. Yeah. So writing what you know, but also writing what you like as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
I mean, the core thing is reasonably relatable for me. It's about somebody who quits their job and does a different kind of career. So I've done that a lot.
Yeah,
And it is kind of scary when you do it. There's a certain amount of risk to that, but it's kind of like a relatable risk.
yeah.
There are no
That's
demons.
awesome. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, yeah, not much danger in getting your head chopped off necessarily by a barbarian in the
Exactly.
gaming or narration world, but yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm so excited to get into it because I mean, I do have a thing for orcs. There's just something about taking an orc out of sort of the classic Warcraft or the classic kind of Lord of the Rings setting and doing something just updated, because obviously it's not your classic medieval world. It's slightly more updated, isn't it, in terms of it's
Got a little bit of
the
anachronism, kind of
world.
like it's not as overt as like Discworld, but there's a certain amount of that. It's trying to be modern and relatable. The characters speak in very modern dialogue.
Yeah.
Their um, their society has kind of fairly modern perceptions about things.
Hmm.
They're not. It doesn't feel like an old European society.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, because it's got that romance aspect in it as well, So I
Yeah.
think that's awesome. Yeah, it seems like it's got a little bit of everything. It's like a coffee shop, you've got little bits here, little bits there, and they seem to, really kind of like homey, homegrown, and yet just powerful in a simple way. It seems like from, I've been reading a lot of reviews and seeing a lot of comments online. So it's all over my TikTok as well.
I initially thought it was going to be a funnier book than it was. I thought I was going to, because the concept is, obviously ridiculous, right? But and so I thought I was going to, it will be kind of like, it'll be a little more tongue in cheek, but then it ended up not be. It just played totally straight,
Mm,
which for whatever reason I think worked, maybe
mm,
accidentally, but it was not what I intended to do when I started. I was like, oh, this would be kind of funny.
yeah, and
But the
yet
humor
you
is
sort of,
more subtle and more just this more dialogue based humor. It's more
mm.
natural and it's not like situational humor.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think it's brilliant. Well, congratulations again, because I mean, it's been just, I would say, kind of a whirlwind journey from the outside. So I can't imagine what it's like on the inside.
It feels like I'm just borrowing somebody else's life for a little while.
Are you getting lots of sort of comments or interactions with readers? A lot of people
I
reaching out
am.
to you. Yeah,
I am. I get fan
yeah.
art, which has
Fan art
blown me
already.
away. I have a pile of fan art, and it is
Oh
it's unbelievable.
my.
And it's really cool. It's just super cool. I don't even know what to do. I'm, it's really amazing. I don't even know how many more ways to say that it's been really humbling and nice because it just
Yeah.
has been. And I've made games that have sold millions of copies and have lots of
Mm,
people have played them, but it's a very different kind of response
mm,
than that. It's a very
yeah.
different kind of, I don't know, entertainment. If people, there's something also really rewarding about like writing something that's personal to you in some way. It's obviously I'm not an orc, but there's a lot of like things that I relate to in the book. And then if other people like relate to them, it's
Mm,
this weird connection that you get that I had not expected, where like somebody else related to things the same way that I related to them. It's just that weird shared experience. And if somebody
mm.
lets you know, it's just really nice.
I know. No, that's
I don't
amazing.
know.
Especially fan art as well. I think I saw some of it. Is it the character Thimble?
Thimble's got
Um,
quite a bit of fan art.
yeah,
Viv and Tandri have quite a bit of fan art.
yeah.
All of the characters I think have had fan art at this point, and I mean, it's, I don't know. I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it. Anyway, it's really cool.
Don't blame you. Don't blame you at all, Travis, because yeah, it's fantastic. Do you think, I mean, we talked kind of a little bit about this, but do you think you did kind of hone in, like you said, on the connection with the characters and the common themes? I mean, do you think the kind of the world over the last 2 years and not being able to go out and a lot of people changing career directions and also life directions? I mean, do you think people are moving or leaning away slightly from the epic side of fantasy and more towards slice of life?
I don't know if they're leaning away from it. I don't think Sanderson's going to have any problems selling books, but I think that people maybe want them more. It's like a vegetable you haven't had in a while or something.
True.
You know, like I haven't had leafy greens in 6 months. I must have some broccoli right now. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't want to equate my book to broccoli. Maybe I do. I like broccoli.
I like it
Um,
as well.
um,
Yeah.
but I don't think anybody's going to throw over epic fantasy anytime soon. And I think Joe Abercrombie is going to be just fine. But, you know, I think there's probably a little room in between those books for something that's just like, oh, well, that was nice.
Yeah, I
I
think
feel
that's it.
good
Yeah.
after I read that.
You say there's a little niche been shouldered out, maybe that's been, not as small as it once was. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously that stuff exists to some extent. I mean, that's what kind of Becky Chambers is doing in sci-fi, right? It's this sort of
Mhm.
relatable slice of life, nice. I mean, TJ Klune,
Mhm.
the House on the Cerulean Sea. I feel like there is this kind of fiction out there. Maybe not in this exact configuration, but I
Mhm.
think people clearly have wanted it in some form. I certainly didn't set out to make it to fill some like gap. That was not in my mind at all. I just wanted
Just
to
a
write something
pure,
that was nice.
yeah.
And I wasn't expecting anybody to read it anyway. I was just
Yeah.
trying to get my book done for November. But
Yeah.
that's probably just I needed the same thing that maybe other people needed.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that's the thing. If you can't find something you need, then you can always create it if you can or hope
Yeah.
to. Any plans then for more Viv adventures? Any kind of further
So
fantasies in this world?
I do have another book that I'm going to be working on, and Tor would like me to have it done. And it's set in the same world, but it's not the same main characters. So
Mhm.
I'm kind of in my mind, I'm going kind of like the Discworld route, where it's
Mhm.
like a standalone stories that kind of stack up over time, and you get a better sense of the world as they stack up. But you could kind of jump in anywhere and get a complete story, and characters kind of can pop up in between them, and so you can just kind of go either direction
Mhm.
wherever you hop in. It's going to be it's going to be like cozy fantasy, cozy mystery a little bit,
Ooh, I like that.
well, it anyway, I'm looking forward to it. Now I feel like I have expectations, and I'm just going to try and pretend that I don't,
Yeah.
because I knew what I was going to write even before this launched. I was like, I had a good time doing this. I'll write another book, and here's what it's going to
Oh, cool.
be. And now I feel like, well, if it doesn't include, a lot of coffee and baking, are people going to be mad?
That's it. Yeah. Do you think you could just go around different occupations? So you've got the coffee shop, different hospitality.
I mean, my hope is
Whereas,
to just do, whatever. I like the characters first. Like if I want to spend time with the characters, that's the most important thing for me. And so I
Mhm.
like my characters, and if I can just, if, I'm hopeful if I just write characters that I like spending time with, that'll work out. God,
Yeah.
fingers crossed. I don't know.
Right.
Even
That's
if
it.
even if it's an abject failure, though, I will just be happy to have been able to do this at all, because I already feel super lucky. So even if
Mm.
nobody likes the next book but me, I'll be okay.
That's it. I mean, that's the kind of like pressure you mentioned, obviously pressure from tour, but then the same way you're approaching it like that is removing some of the pressure. I feel. I'm just thinking,
That's what I'm trying to
right,
do. I'm convincing myself here in this interview right now.
that's
That's
it.
that's what this is.
Yeah, yeah. That's positive reinforcement all the time, right? So what is you said obviously NaNoWriMo, which is something that hasn't actually come up in the lounge in terms of how a book was written. So I mean, yeah, how did you find the process? I mean, was there a lot of discovery, or did your previous NaNoWriMos kind of put you in good stead for it?
The previous ones totally showed me what I shouldn't do, since I was never successful. So
Right.
this is the first time I outlined. I did outline in advance, and I've never outlined before. I was convinced I was a pantser, and I am just not. I really
Right.
wish I was, because it seems like it would be cool, but
I
I'm
know,
just not
right?
that cool. So I outlined. Um, I picked a way simpler story than I've ever done before. I always tried to do something. If I'm going to do this, guy better be really amazing and
Mhm.
epic. And I finally came to the realization that you can have a simple story that's fine.
Yes.
So I picked something simple. And the outline was a really big deal for me, because I always get lost in the middle.
Mm,
And just having a signpost within a few feet to lunge for in the middle of a snowstorm was like a big deal for me.
yeah.
Um, I had a nano buddy, so we kept each other on our word counts, which was also really helpful. Um, and then it got a little easier toward the end. Once I passed like the 2/3 mark, the first 1/3 is always pretty easy for me every time. That
Mhm.
middle third, But once I made it past that, it was like, okay, I'm going to finish. This is going to happen now.
Yeah. And you did it. Yeah.
And I wrote in here. I wrote in this booth, which also was kind of
Mm,
nice. It's totally quiet. Nobody bugs
I can
you.
imagine. Yeah, it's
And I
got
wrote
the
until I
FOMO.
left. So there were no other distractions. I couldn't get a snack or something. I sat down in here, I did my words, and then I got out.
Mm. I think that's my problem because I sit in front of these windows and I've got the cityscape and I'm just like always looking at like, oh, there's a dog in a park or
Something
someone
cool
doing
over
something fun.
there.
Yeah, right. All my
I
phones
mean,
are
I
all going
suppose I
off.
have a computer here. I can get online. I can go
Mm,
browse, but at least it was somewhat limited
strict.
distraction.
Yeah. No, it sounds like you're obviously committed to it. You're in the spirit of NaNoWriMo, strict and kind of doing a sort of sensory deprivation style thing. But there's something about those recording booths. I've got like a bit of a background in music, and there's something about sort of either small or big, that studio sound and that dampened sound around you. It is like conducive, I think, to concentration. Yeah.
It's kind of a calm place to be. It's
Mm.
relatively serene.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, when you're not narrating and not writing best-selling books, or thinking about games, running games, because you're still CEO of Double Damage Games, aren't you? Still kind of.
I am, but I don't really devote much time to it these days
Yeah.
because we're not building anything new. And I
Yeah.
was the only engineer, so we're definitely not making anything. So there's not much of my time gets devoted to that.
Mm,
I have occasional little bits of business, but
that's
mostly
it.
it's narration.
Yeah.
And about to be, I need to get back. I need to get outlining again.
Yeah.
Um, Apart from that, I will occasionally find enough time to play a game. I'm picking
Nice.
very, very slowly at Elden Ring and waiting for
Yes.
Breath of the Wild 2 until the end of time. Um, and I read when I can. I was telling you earlier, I don't, it's hard for me to read full books because I'm reading all day and I'm not good about putting a book down and picking it back up.
Mhm.
I find it really hard to resume. So I read a lot of novellas. So I like reading as an actual, I still enjoy reading even though I do it for work.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
because
that's
I get
good.
to pick those. I get to pick those. It's nice. Um, I mean, I got kids, so I got plenty of dadding to do.
Mhm.
And Well, my life sounds really boring, but
That's good.
I have a relatively dense schedule of audio, so I just spend a lot of
Yeah.
time narrating audio.
Yeah. That sounds great. And you're out in the Pacific Northwest, aren't you? On my
I
side of
am
the one.
east side of Washington. Yep.
Oh, nice. Yeah, great stuff. I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of that's a kind of, I don't know. There's something about the PNW I find really inspiring, and I'm not a native here, obviously, hence the accent. But yeah, I like to get out as much as possible. I find there's a lot of inspiration to be found, even if I'm still worried about bears constantly. Like it's this weird British thing that just like I could go out into a park and I'll just be like bear.
Are
Just
you
my
West
voice.
Side Washington? You're West Side
Uh,
Washington.
no, I'm Vancouver. So
Okay.
yeah, it's just a little bit north. But
Yeah,
I'm still, same sort of country, and I'm like, oof, somewhere. There's got to be a bear downtown
must be a
somewhere, I'm
bear.
sure. So if you were to open a coffee shop there, imagine if yourself as Viv, and you get three fantasy characters besides your own, because you must have come across a lot in your obviously your work and your reading. Which three fantasy characters would you open a coffee shop with?
Bilbo Baggins, clearly, because the larder would be perfectly stocked.
Oh, that's a good choice.
Um, Nanny Og from
Okay.
Discworld, I
Yeah.
think, and Fezzik from The Princess Bride. He'd be able to reach everything
Yeah.
and has very calming vibe.
Yeah. I like how you're approaching it from a very practical sort of business sense as well. It's like we need the Lattice inject, we need
Who could I stand to be in a room with all day?
that's it.
And
Yeah.
what could they do for the coffee shop?
That's it. That's good. Would you have any theme to your coffee shop or just good old standard, essentially what's happened in Legends and Lattes?
There was a Cuban coffee shop that I used to
Mm,
frequent in Seattle when I lived in Seattle. It's not open anymore, but it was great. And so I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for
mm.
Cuban espresso. It's
Ooh, sounds
specific kind
good.
of roast and specific kind of preparation and super good. So that
Mm,
would probably be what I did. I'm sure that fits so well with my fantasy character choices, but that's still what I would do.
that's it. Yeah, that's cool. So the same question about the running a coffee shop with three other people, but authors, because I mean you must work with a lot of authors, either directly or indirectly. Or living or dead. Any,
Yeah. You know what? Robin McKinley,
Okay, yeah.
Spindle's End, or not Spindle's End, what's it called? Sunlight. Sunlight. I had a really great coffee shop in it. And I think about that coffee shop from
Yeah,
Sunlight all the time. Um, let's see, Becky Chambers, I think. Becky
yeah,
Chambers. She
that's a good
would
choice.
she would be invested in having the right vibe.
Yeah.
And Grady Hendrix, just
Uh,
for a little bit of a slightly more, I don't know, a little darker edge to it,
yeah.
but with a good sense of humor.
That's good. Yeah, it sounds like some good business partners as well. Awesome. Are you a coffee man yourself out of interest?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
far too much coffee. My
Yeah.
wife and I got ourselves one of those little espresso makers, those little automatic espresso makers for our like
Mm,
25th wedding anniversary. And I drink far too much of it. It's now that it's so convenient. Oh my
yeah.
God, I've had three double espressos today already.
Don't know how you do it. No, I
I
turned
don't
off
even,
the
well,
coffee pretty.
about the time we got it, suddenly I started waking up a lot more at night, not
Mhm.
sleeping through as well. And I was like, gosh, what could that be? I'm sure it was the daylight saving switch. That had to be the daylight
Yeah.
saving switch. Couldn't have anything to do with the fact that now I'm drinking three double espressos a day. I still
Yeah.
refuse to believe it.
No. No, I would get the shakes. I'd be seeing things in the corners or something in my peripheries
Yeah,
like
build
that.
up your tolerance. It's like the
Yeah.
iocane powder, but it's caffeine.
Yeah, I drank a lot when I was, I mean, way back when I was working in hospitality. There's always a coffee machine around, whether you're a bar or in this kiosk in the station I used to work in. There was just a button you could press. You could just do it all, but actually decent coffee. And I got into having, yeah, a double, triple, and then quadruple espressos, and then have one or two of those an hour. And oof, nah, I kind of said goodbye to that a long time ago. But I still love it. I still love my decaf. I still love the kind of the writing in coffee shops. But yeah, you'd have to peel me off the walls otherwise. Well, Travis, this has been really insightful and a really fun chat. And for anyone who's watching, they want to find Legends and Lattes, they want to find you as a narrator. Yeah, where can they find you?
I've got a website at travisbaldree.com, which is where I mostly, do narration work. As far as Legends and Lattes, it's on Amazon and Audible, and it's pretty easy to search for. So
Yeah. And you narrated the audiobook yourself, of course, didn't you?
I did. I couldn't
Yeah.
give it up.
How was that kind of reading your own work?
Y-
Because
y-
I try and edit out loud myself.
It's a great way
I
to do it,
couldn't,
right?
right, the editing, but then I tried to do my own audiobooks way back in the day and could not get past the first chapter. I don't know, it's my voice in my head. I'm not sure what it is, my own words. But yeah, how was your experience?
It was the easiest narration I've ever done. So like as a narrator, when you're reading, like half of it is like anticipation. It's like, where's this sentence going to go? What's the author going to do? And so the closer the author is to what I'm going to do, the easier the book is to read. And there's just no way to get any closer than having it written and edited through multiple rounds, the book yourself. You
Mm,
just know where everything is going to go. So there's just never any ambiguity.
mm, that's right.
You're never ever wondering what the author meant.
Yeah, that is true, actually. Did you find yourself making any edits as you're going through? Because I do that sort of thing
Caught
when
a
I'm reading.
couple of minor, like a copy edit thing or
That's good.
two, and I found one minor continuity error that I
Mm,
caught while I was reading out loud. It was really minor, but I promptly fixed it. So
yeah,
I knew I was going to do this because I'm always finding errors when I read audiobooks. It's hard
right.
for them not to get through. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter how many rounds you go through. So I
Yeah,
figured I would just do the audiobook before the ebook was final, just to make sure I caught any last things.
smart. Yeah. That's excellent. That's great. Well, again, Travis, this has been fantastic. Thanks so much for dropping into the Fantasy Author Lounge. Really interesting to talk to you. And
Thanks so
yeah, I can
much.
only see some fantastic things in the future, for both you and Legends and Lattes. And I tell you what, I would love to get you narrating one of my series as well. So yeah,
I'd love to do it.
I'd love to do it. Yeah, that sounds great. Well, yeah, you take care. You obviously, yeah, happy writing, happy narrating. And yeah, thanks for dropping into the lounge.
Thank you so much.